This chapter, chapter 34, is titled Gallstones? The Miracle of Ayurveda. May this reading relax you. For the first few years at the ashram, I ate my meals happily in the Bhandara, the large main dining hall. Bells rang twice a day, and I took my place cross-legged on the thin mat and ate whatever was scooped onto my metal tray. Occasionally, spontaneously, my guru, Swamiji, would ask, "Would you like to eat chocolate?" Sometimes it was after a meeting about seva, selfless service. After clearing a full file of work, he'd say, "Maybe there is some chocolate for you." Sometimes, in seemingly random moments, he would say, "Chocolate? Would you like a chocolate?" How boxes of Belgian, Swiss, German, and Austrian chocolate appeared in the small refrigerator of the tiny kitchen Swamiji used for heating water to gargle or drink in the winter was beyond me. "Yes, I know you like it," he'd say, sticking one piece in my mouth and another into my hands. "I want this, Guru. I want chocolate, Guru." "You must feel bored with the food being the same all the time," he asked one day. How could I explain the gift of never having to think about what to eat? How to explain the gift of chanting while everyone's plates were being filled, then eating boiled potatoes and lentils in silence flanked by fellow devotees? Bored? Never. For the first time in my life, and perhaps for the first time in generations of women in my family, food had become a friend. I didn't miss anything. If we recall back to, many parts of this book, our dear author had struggled with eating disorders for much of her childhood and parts of her adult life, specifically bulimia. But through her spiritual practice, she has been transformed into, clearly, a whole new unit. Quite the unit now she is. Eating food, happy to eat food. And I love that her guru is making her feel safe to do so. But chocolate was never to be refused. And it wasn't just any chocolate. He never fed me Cadbury or Nestle or any generic variety. It was as though the exotic chocolate fairy paid a visit to his fridge every week and left a box for his American secretary. Sometimes after meeting with after a group of devotees in his garden, he would rise from the grass and we would all rise with him. I always tried to stay back to see if there was actually any important seva or anything Swamiji needed. Or so I told myself. Actually, it was to linger for an extra glance, an extra smile, an extra energetic transmission of the grace that flowed from his eyes into my cells. As I'd lose awareness of where my body physically ends and the universe begins, as I melted into the jasmine-fragranced evening or the sun-soaked afternoon, as I bowed low at his feet and then rose to meet his eyes, to swim again in an ocean without a shore, Swamiji would say, "Chocolate? Would you like a chocolate?" Then, one day in April 1999, a devotee arrived with a basket of baked goodies. Bringing food items to the guru is standard fare. Each day as lines of devotees wait on benches in and near the reception area for the 2 open darshans, their hands and laps are full of fruit. But Swamiji long ago announced that he would not accept any gifts. "I don't need anything. Bring only your pain. Bring only your obstacles. Bring only your anger. Give me that as your Guru Dakshina." A gift from disciple to Guru. Do not bring gifts. Then people tried bringing large bouquets of flowers or intricately woven garlands. "Please leave the flowers on the bushes where God put them," he would request. I appreciate and accept your devotion, but please offer me the flower of your heart, the flower of your service for humanity. Do not bring bouquets of God's children who have been ripped from their stem." Later, he acquiesced to accepting a single flower. "Okay, as our tradition of offering flowers to the Guru is so strong, you may offer just one flower." He amended the instructions, "but it must have fallen from the bush or vine." He emphasized, "Do not pluck any flowers." So devotees were left with the possibility of fruit. Swamiji had instructed specifically what he wanted: our anger, our pain, our obstacles, our temptations, to offer these to him so he could give them to Ganga or to God, and we would be free. He wanted our devotion and our commitment to serve humanity. He did not want gifts. But tradition is strong, and the grip is not easily loosened, and fruit became the gift of choice. Fruit he did not refuse. It could always be used. Use it or lose it. He used it. With so many people eating every day, fruit at least could be shared and could benefit everyone. It didn't harm the earth. The bounty was provided by Mother Nature. And I love that. I was thinking the other day, you know how when we talk about different diets, we say that no matter what you eat, you have to eat some part of life. I think we often forget that there is at least one kind of life that we eat that is a consensual process, and that's fruit. The tree provides fruit so that we eat it. Of course, the transaction is that we poop out the seeds, and those seeds grow into other plants. But otherwise, we can compost the seeds or the cores of our apples or whatever we're eating. And there's definitely no karma in eating fruit then, unless you steal it from someone. Anyway, but one day, some devotees came from Australia with a basket of egg-free cakes and cookies. That evening, Swamiji took me into his small kitchen. "This has come," he said, pointing to a large wicker gift basket filled with more than a dozen boxes of Western baked goods. "They are very nice items. You can enjoy them." Within the next 2 days, I had eaten nearly everything in the basket. Until then, I'd had no craving. I never found myself thinking, "Oh, I'd love a cookie." But once I beheld the beauty of these Australian goodies set artfully on fake grass, I could think of nothing else. I became a marionette with strings being pulled by a part of me I'd forgotten was there. I opened the first box and put one cookie into my mouth, and my taste buds kicked right in. I finished the whole box without even realizing what had happened. That happens, doesn't it? Each box was a different variety, and so they all had to be tried. Whenever I went back to the kitchen for another, I couldn't very well move the basket to my office, even though I was the only one eating it. If Swamiji was in his sitting room alone, I would ask him, "Would you like one?" I knew the answer would be no, but just to be polite, I asked. He granted me the freedom to access the kitchen, and I didn't want him to think I was ungrateful or took it for granted. "Are you sure you wouldn't even like one?" I asked. "They are really nice. You were right." "No," he said without even looking up. Then as I moved past him into the kitchen, he continued, "We don't just keep eating. In Hindi, me and hum, I and we, are used interchangeably. So Swamiji and other Indians might say we when they're actually referring to themselves in the singular. It's possible he meant the plural we to refer to the true yogis or spiritual people, or to those who have a grip on their impulses, or who are not slaves to their senses. He didn't elaborate, and I was too embarrassed to ask. He felt me pause and said, No, it's okay. Keep enjoying. Whereas most spiritual teachers give both instructions and injunctions, Swamiji's way is to remove obstacles between us and our growth. He doesn't change us, but rather encourages situations through which we will experience what we need for personal change. He had intuited that I was still under the thumb of my taste buds and that parts of me still craved the numbness of a carb hangover. That's funny. Until those parts were brought into the light, they couldn't be healed. So he handed me a monster basket of cakes and cookies. For 2 days, I was intoxicated, and, other than a bit bloated, not unpleasantly so. I skipped most of the meals in the bandara and fed myself chocolate-filled cookies and sandwiches instead. Or actually, what she had written is, chocolate-filled cookie sandwiches instead. On the night of the 3rd day, after having finished off most of the basket and given away everything else for fear I would eat it, I woke up feverish and trembling. I shook to the core, not just my arms and legs, but the muscles that held my organs in place. This went on all night long. The next morning, I called the ashram doctor, who said it sounded like malaria. He gave me some medicine for fever and said to watch it another day. The same thing happened the following night. It's definitely malaria, the doctor pronounced, even though the blood tests came back negative. Then, the diarrhea started. If this food is making you nibbly G to infinity, I think we're about to transition to a less appetizing topic. By this point, the gift basket was far from my mind. It had been nearly 2 days since I had finished my last cookie, and I figured the diarrhea was related to the fever, not the pastries. And the diarrhea was white, in case you needed to know that. Like someone who had simply poured a glass of milk into the toilet. I spent the next 2 days doubled over in pain with a fever that finally broke on the 3rd day. But the diarrhea didn't go away with the fever. The doctor gave me a variety of medicines, but none of them worked. Finally, Swamiji called an Ayurvedic doctor he knew, a renowned specialist in the traditional ancient India system of medicine. The doctor did not need a stool sample or even to feel my distended stomach. He looked at my tongue and held the wrists of both my hands gently while taking the pulse of my inner forearm with different fingers and pressure. I felt like the strings of a guitar on which he played a very slow, deliberate melody. Finally, he asked, "Have you eaten a lot of medha recently?" Medha is the Hindi word for the Wonder Bread variety of refined white flour. It had now been 5 or 6 days since my binge, and I actually hadn't connected it with malaria, a mosquito-borne illness. Well, yes, I admitted. I ate a lot of cookies and cakes just under a week ago. He explained that the sugar in the flour had taxed my internal organs. He didn't specify anything more, and that it would only get worse and would create a lifetime of difficulty for me if I didn't follow his instructions exactly. He sent a young boy out into the market to get a variety of herbs he crushed by hand over the following hour. Finally, he handed me 3 or 4 bottles, each containing what looked like dirt from different flower pots. They were each brown and finely ground, some a bit darker and some a bit lighter. This one you take before each meal, 1 spoonful in the mouth, followed by freshly churned buttermilk. This one you mix into the buttermilk, 1/2 spoon. This should be eaten with papaya first thing in the morning. And this one, take twice a day on an empty stomach, followed by 1 glass of warm water. And, he said as he stood to leave, no more medha. Since the cookies, I had barely eaten anything. I had no appetite at all, and between the pain and the fever, it was all I could do to get down some fruit or thin soup. Within 24 hours of starting the medical regime, I was starving. I walked into our kitchen and asked the cook, "Please make me a full meal. I am so hungry." The fever ended without ever actually breaking. There were no sweaty sheets or wet shirts from the perspiration of a fever breaking. This one just went quietly away, as did the diarrhea. After 2 days, it was as though the entire experience had never happened. When I was back in Los Angeles a few months later, I mentioned to my doctor what I had been through, and he asked me to come in for an ultrasound. "Seems like you had gallstones," he said. "The cookies probably pushed them into the duct, which is why you had such pain and the fever." This doctor seems to somehow... My doctor paused for a long moment. "He seems to have just melted them." The science of Ayurveda, literally the science, the Veda, scripture, wisdom of life, is based on balance. A balance of hot and cold, light and heavy, energies and characteristics. Its goal is not to treat the symptoms, but to restore balance to the system. Through feeling the pulses of the body, not just the speed of the heart, but the flow of the different energy systems, and looking at the health of the tongue, the doctor gets all the information needed to know what's out of balance. I was out of balance both physically and mentally. The baked goods had thrown my digestive organs into a frenzy, leading perhaps, as my LA doctor hypothesized, to gallstones getting pushed into the duct. But it was a systemic imbalance in the first place that had led me being unable to stop eating something so detrimental to my own health. Self-sabotage on any level is an indication of a system gone awry. His treatment not only cured the diarrhea and fever, it not only dissolved the gallstones, if there were gallstones, it also rebalanced my system such that the moment, more than 20 years ago, such that since that moment, more than 20 years ago, I have never been tempted to eat a cookie or cake, even if it's vegetarian. That's the end of the 34th chapter. Thank you for listening. Namaste. That is a bit of an introduction into the science of life, Ayurveda. It's very similar to Tibetan medical practices. Perhaps they share a common origin. I was recently watching documentaries on Tibetan doctors, and they do exactly the same thing. They put different fingers on different parts of different veins, not just to check the speed of the heart and blood pressure, but to feel the changing rate of flow from one part of your body to another. And then they just look at you. No poking and prodding and various tests that are invasive. And then they give you some magical combination of herbs, and then a significant amount of the time the people get cured, and it's amazing. If only we could complement our Western science with this ancient Eastern practice. It's nice to have both worlds at our disposal. That was a funny chapter. I really liked that. We'll read the next chapter next time.